June 4, 1942. Midway Atoll disappears beneath a wall of mist. High above the Pacific, Japanese aircraft slice through a thin shroud of cloud, engines humming like distant thunder across an empty sea. Sunlight breaks on the wings of Zero fighters, escorting bombers toward what they believe is a dying American outpost. Below them, the ocean glitters deceptively calm, an endless mirror that hides its secrets well. Then, across their headsets, a faint crackle interrupts the monotony of flight. An American voice, clipped, metallic, barely discernible through static. A carrier signal, broadcasting coordinates in the Western Pacific. One message, repeated. Tone steady. Calm. To the Japanese attackers, it sounds impossible. How could American transmissions still be so strong? Could there be more carriers behind those clouds? The formations tighten, anxiety rippling through disciplined air crews. What was supposed to be a clean strike on an isolated target suddenly feels like the prelude to an ambush. The sky itself seems to whisper deception. Somewhere below, unseen through the haze, the true battle for Midway is quietly beginning. 6 months earlier, the sky above Pearl Harbor had burned. Japan had shattered the American Pacific Fleet's battleships in a 2-hour assault that stunned the world and, for a time, seemed to hand the empire control of the Pacific. In those months that followed, the rising sun advanced almost unchecked. Wake, the Philippines, Singapore, and the Dutch East Indies fallen in succession. Confident in victory, Japan's fleet commander, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, sought a final showdown that would erase the last American resistance in the Central Pacific. The linchpin of his design was Operation MI, the capture of tiny Midway Atoll, a speck of coral halfway between Asia and North America. From there, Japan could threaten Hawaii itself. Yamamoto intended to draw out the remaining U.S. carriers, destroy them, and end the war on Japan's terms. His plan was a masterpiece on paper. 4 frontline carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, supported by battleships and cruisers, would strike swiftly and decisively. But Japan's strength masked deep flaws. Intelligence had grown complacent. Reconnaissance stretched over vast distances, and overconfidence dulled caution. Yamamoto's forces assumed the Americans were weakened, clinging to 2 or 3 battered carriers barely repaired after Coral Sea. Yet, unseen in Honolulu and Pearl Harbor, Admiral Chester Nimitz and a small cadre of intelligence officers were already reading parts of Japan's mail. Months of cryptanalysis at Station Haipo, a windowless basement deep beneath the 14th Naval District, had cracked crucial portions of Japan's JN-25 code. Each intercepted fragment sketched faint outlines of Yamamoto's upcoming strike. By late May 1942, Nimitz knew Midway was the target. His problem? He needed proof. The trap required bait, and deception would supply it. And so, far from any guns or decks, the next move in the Pacific War began, not with torpedoes, but with words. The stage was set for one of history's most decisive exchanges, born inside cramped rooms thick with cigarette smoke and radio hum. Inside Station Haipo, the air vibrated with the rhythm of typewriters and the whine of decoding machines. Sleep was rare. Intelligence officer Joseph Rochefort, a quiet, eccentric figure often seen in slippers and a red bathrobe, guided his team through the tangled maze of Japanese ciphers. Row after row of operators listened to intercepted streams of numbers, every digit a possible clue to what Japan intended next. They had isolated fragments mentioning an objective, cryptonym AF. Somewhere, the Japanese fleet was preparing to strike at AF, but where was it? Analysts argued over maps of the Central Pacific, tracing radii of flight and supply. Then Rochefort proposed a daring experiment. Transmit a false message from Midway reporting a fresh water shortage. If the Japanese repeated in their encrypted traffic that AF was short on water, it would confirm the target's identity. Days later, Tokyo's encrypted traffic referred exactly to that distress. AF reports water problem. Sturtin, proof arrived in the same monotone rhythm of Morse. Yamamoto's stratagem was revealed. Nimitz now held the critical advantage. Outnumbered but forewarned, he committed his 3 carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown, to intercept. Midway's airfield would serve as the outpost's fighting heart. Every available bomber, torpedo plane, and patrol craft was ordered north of the island. Meanwhile, the Japanese armada moved east in grand formation. Hundreds of aircraft, 4 carriers, 2 battleships, heavy cruisers, and destroyers. Confidence reigned aboard Akagi's bridge. After Coral Sea, American strength seemed negligible. Yamamoto himself sailed far behind with the main body, expecting merely to finish what his flat tops began. But over the horizon, invisible to him, the Americans waited in silence. Their radar antennas rotated methodically in the night wind. Radio discipline was absolute. No unnecessary transmissions lest they betray position. Yet this very restraint would feed Japanese uncertainty. When the first phantom bursts of English radio chatter reached their receivers, they imagined not silence, but a fleet too vast to hide by chance. From code rooms to signal decks, an invisible mind game had begun, one in which a single transmission could redraw the fate of empires. Aboard both fleets, war was measured in nerves. On the Akagi, Japanese aviators rose before dawn, their routine precise. Rice, fish, green tea, then the ritual of folding headbands marked with the red sun. The hangar smelled of fuel and lacquer. Pilots eyed their maps, confident, but beneath the precision lay exhaustion. The Empire had stretched its seasoned crews across thousands of miles. They imagined Midway would be another easy strike. On the American side, life felt raw. The crew of the Yorktown, barely repaired after Coral Sea, worked 18-hour shifts, patching decks and wiring communications. Below, signalmen hunched over glowing receivers, ears aching from monotone static. They understood something few aboard Akagi, yet realized knowledge could outweigh firepower. Midway's defense rested not on numbers but anticipation. Nimitz's carriers were dispersed northeast of the atoll in a 3-point ambush, their position chosen through faith in Rochefort's decrypts. Aviators had rehearsed reconnaissance loops, ready to strike the minute a Japanese bearing appeared. The Japanese approach, by contrast, was a masterpiece of timing but a disaster of assumptions. Believing American morale broken and carriers absent, Admiral Nagumo Chuichi launched his first wave to destroy Midway's airfields, saving half his warplanes armed with torpedoes for any enemy ships that might appear after the initial raid. It was cautious, deliberate, and fatally slow. Between both sides stretched the vast indifferent Pacific. Radio waves ricocheting between clouds and sea spray. Every signal a potential revelation or trap. American operators broadcast deceptive routine traffic, minor logistical chatter, enough to sound like multiple groups maneuvering somewhere beyond the horizon. For the Japanese, whose reconnaissance planes arrived late, these echoes suggested hidden movements. Perhaps 2 or 3 carrier groups, maybe more. Fear did not appear dramatically. It crept. Japanese aviators, trained to interpret every shred of static as truth, began to question their striking plan. Was that a U.S. task force repositioning east? Was that English voice code a deliberate beacon or a trap? Unknown to them, one carefully placed American transmission, relaying false bearings and status reports, reinforced the illusion that an entire fleet lurked invisibly north of the mist. In that ocean of uncertainty, the balance of confidence quietly began to tilt. The mist of doubt would soon thicken, and technology would play its decisive role in that illusion. Midway was not just a battle of planes and torpedoes, it was a duel of frequencies. Every side fought through the airwaves before a bomb ever dropped. American radio discipline bordered on absolute silence, broken only by calculated bursts designed to be overheard. Operators used short-coded expressions, maintaining a pattern of calm precision that sounded, to Japanese ears, like the hum of multiple commands relayed across a formation. The Japanese Navy also had its own formidable communications technology, encryption systems, direction-finding sets, signals officers trained to triangulate enemy transmitters. But at Midway, this technology, so carefully developed, worked against them. Limited reconnaissance and time delays in decoding left their picture blurry. Their own transmissions, rich with procedure and confirmation, gave away rhythms of movement. Fragments intercepted by the Americans were pieced together like shards of glass to reveal an entire fleet's outline. Radar, still in its infancy, added another layer of uneven awareness. Midway's American operators tracked incoming formations in the pre-dawn haze, their screens blinking with faint echoes on the horizon. Japan's carrier force, lacking an equivalent early warning system, was forced to rely on human eyes in an ocean millions of square miles wide. The invisible spectrum became the most crowded battlefield of all. Admiral Nagumo, commanding the forward carrier group, faced a torment familiar to all leaders at sea: decide or delay. With reports of enemy carriers conflicting and clouds thickening, he hesitated. Should he rearm his planes for ship attack or continue striking Midway? The conflicting radio signals, including that mysterious English transmission mistakenly believed to come from another American task force, tilted his uncertainty toward fear of ambush. On the American side, Nimitz showed the opposite temperament. Cool, methodical, he trusted the intangible. Rochefort's logic, signals discipline, and patient silence. Where Japan's command structure prized certainty before action, Nimitz valued readiness in ambiguity. Amid that fog of decision-making, a moral undercurrent pulsed. Information had become a weapon more potent than courage. The men crouched behind radio sets waged their own unseen campaign, shaping the choices of admirals hundreds of miles away. When the first Japanese attack wave turned for home, their commanders believed they were circling above a hidden fleet. Fear had become as real as steel, and now the clash of illusions would erupt in fire as morning light found both sides. The true heart of the Battle of Midway was about to reveal itself, not through code, but through sudden combat. Dawn, June 4, 1942. The Pacific stretches under a low ceiling of cloud, the horizon indistinct. The Japanese carriers, arrayed in tight formation, appear serene, a floating city moving in ordered rhythm. Below deck, armorers haul aerial bombs and torpedoes across metal grating. Above, Nagumo studies new reports. Midway's airfield still operational. So they do. But reconnaissance now claims a possible U.S. carrier northeast of the atoll. The words hit like a stone dropped into still water. That single American signal, a brief communication intercepted hours earlier, still echoes in Nagumo's mind. Direction finding had placed it north by northwest, strength unusually strong, modulation steady. Impossible, he thinks, for one transmission to reach so clearly unless several ships were broadcasting in unison. Was there another carrier group hidden in the mist? Or worse, a larger fleet waiting for the moment his decks were bare? Nagumo hesitates. 4 decks are crowded with aircraft half-armed. Bombers, prepared for a second strike on Midway, are being modified for anti-ship attack. It is a commander's nightmare. Refueling lines stretched across hangars, bombs stacked for rearming, torpedoes lying exposed. Every minute of indecision deepens the chaos. Above, Japanese pilots returning from Midway's assault report, no opposition fleet sighted. Sati, yet uncertainty gnaws. The American radio message had felt too calm, too deliberate. An invitation whispered through static. At 0930 hours, Nagumo orders a change. Switch the bomb loads again. Return to original configuration for land targets. The hangars become a frenzy of motion. Bomb carts screech. Mechanics shout above engines that never cease. Then, at Aero 9:45, a scout plane from Cruiser Tone sends its belated signal, "Enemy carrier sighted." In that instant, silence grips the flagship's bridge. Deck officers glance skyward. Gunners swivel toward the gray horizon. Nagumo's greatest fear manifests. Not trickery, but confirmation. The Americans are here. How many? The same lone radio signal still thrums in his ears, suggesting more than his sight verifies. He orders a hurried reversal, desperate to ready aircraft now armed with the wrong weapons. Below decks, fuel hoses pulse. Vapors hang heavy. On Akagi's flight deck, crews race against time. To the east, bombers already rising out of clouds are closing fast, unseen and unsummoned. The Japanese fleet, rattled by ghosts in the ether, is about to be struck by real thunder. The sun slices through the last veil of fog. From the northeast, 3 American squadrons converge: Enterprise, Yorktown, and Hornet. Each pilot guided by instinct, luck, and faint signals barely carried across the sea. Hours of blind searching collapse into a few decisive minutes. At 10:20 hours, the sky above Nagumo's formation darkens with dots. Dive bombers come screaming down at 70 degrees, engines echoing through the cloud breaks. The Japanese carrier decks, still cluttered with half-loaded aircraft and fuel lines, become volatile traps. The first to fall is Kaga. Commander Dick Best's bomb pierces her flight deck, igniting stacked torpedoes in a chain eruption that splits steel like paper. Orange fire bursts skyward, swallowing sailors whole. Within seconds, a second carrier, Akagi, Nagumo's flagship, is hit aft by a single bomb that finds its way among volatile fuel cells. A bright column rises 300 feet into the air, the heat visible for miles. Across the formation, Soryu is next. Smoke rolls from her bow, her bridge a silhouette inside a rising inferno. Men throw themselves into the sea to escape the roaring fire. For a moment, Nagumo stands motionless, choking on the bitter smoke of disbelief. In less than 5 minutes, 3 of his 4 carriers, half the beating heart of Japan's naval air power, are mortally wounded. The American air groups, unaware of the full extent of their success, peel away and disappear into the same clouds that had hidden them. Only Hiryu, the lone surviving Japanese carrier, remains operational. Her commanders launch a desperate counterstrike that finds and cripples the Yorktown, but it cannot alter fate. Hours later, American bombers return and find Hiryu too. By evening, she burns from stem to stern. Across the waves, shocked survivors drift on debris, watching the last plumes fade into the darkening horizon. The radio airwaves, once alive with Japanese chatter, now fall silent except for distress calls. The phantom fleet that had haunted them earlier, the imagined armada behind the lone American signal, had never existed, but its echo had shaped every decision that morning, amplifying hesitation, multiplying fear. And as the fires spread across twisted decks, the illusion became indistinguishable from fate itself. The Pacific quiets again, smoke drifting west. Beneath it lies victory for one side, revelation for the other. By nightfall on June 4, 1942, the vast Pacific had become a graveyard. The proud Japanese carrier force, once the spearhead of an empire, lay shattered, burning or sinking beneath dark surf. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and later Hiryu, all gone. More than 300 aircraft lost, alongside many of the best-trained naval aviators in the world. The losses could never be replaced. The men trained since the 1930s to wage carrier warfare had vanished with their ships. Survivors clung to debris, their faces lit by the eerie fluorescence of oil-slick water. Destroyers circled to rescue whoever could be found. But sharks, fire, and spreading fuel rendered mercy almost impossible. Eyewitnesses described the sea as boiling with flame. Above that inferno, the remnants of Japan's once invincible air fleet disappeared into the night, horizonless and broken. On the American side, jubilation was tempered with disbelief. Admiral Nimitz received brief, coded messages indicating 3, Then 4 carriers sunk. Station Hypo, far from the front, erupted in exhausted elation. Rochefort wrote quietly in his log, "Results as predicted." Nerds, the quiet triumph was as cerebral as it was emotional. The radio deception that had begun in the windowless basement had concluded in the Pacific's open theater, validating intelligence over sheer mass. For Japan's leadership, news arrived fragmentary and confusing. Yamamoto, hundreds of miles away with the main body of the fleet, refused at first to believe Nagumo's reports. He ordered retreat only after receiving confirmation of total carrier loss. The Empire's advance momentum ceased abruptly, like a great machine stripped of gears. Beneath the calm veneer of messages and communiques, a realization spread through both nations. Information, reading it, hiding it, bending it, had decided the outcome. The flames over Midway did not simply mark a defeat. They signaled a transformation in how wars would henceforth be fought. In the days following the battle, the ocean around Midway grew silent once more, disturbed only by the distant drone of search aircraft sweeping for survivors. U.S. patrols recovered a handful of exhausted floaters from the wreckage. Charred, burned, some still clutching fragments of aircraft skin or soaked flight gloves. Interrogations revealed a chilling truth. Many Japanese officers had believed, until the last moment, that multiple American carrier groups were engaged. The Phantom Fleet, conjured by fragments of radio deception, had endured even after their real warships vanished beneath the waves. At Pearl Harbor, Nimitz composed his after-action report with clinical brevity. 4 enemy carriers destroyed. 1 American carrier lost. U.S. dominance in the Central Pacific restored. Yet in quiet moments, he credited none of it to fate. Intelligence, he remarked, made possible our victory. Behind that understatement lay the long nights of Rochefort's team, the disciplined silence aboard the carriers, and the single transmission that had sown chaos at the right instant. For Japan, the reckoning was painful and private. The Imperial Navy sealed its loss in secrecy. Families were told their sons had fallen gloriously. Yamamoto convened silent meetings aboard Yamato, his despair hidden by formality. He knew the Empire's offensive power had expired in one morning. Historians would later call Midway the turning point of the Pacific War. But, on the ground, on the atoll's scarred runways littered with tires and craters, it felt less like triumph and more like survival. The American garrison buried their dead beside wrecks of torpedo planes, the sea breeze carrying both gratitude and fatigue. Above them, the radios that once deceived an empire now broadcast victory messages across calm channels. Signalmen listened, knowing the age of battleships had ended, and the age of information warfare had quietly begun. Out of static and fear had come transformation, and history itself awaited meaning in its echo. The Battle of Midway marked more than a shift in naval fortune. It marked humanity's awakening to the power of perception. A single American radio message, just one fragment of sound humming through salt air, had helped unmake an empire's illusion of invincibility. The fear it ignited was not irrational. It was the natural reaction of men taught to trust their instruments, suddenly betrayed by them. From that day forward, the Pacific ceased to be a stage of invulnerable thunderheads and became instead a contest of logic, listening, and illusion. The lesson endured in every conflict after. Victory belongs not only to the side that strikes hardest, but to the one that understands what the enemy believes to be true. Rochefort and his codebreakers labored on in anonymity. Their contribution remained classified for decades. Nimitz would credit the will of Providence, but the truth had been quieter, almost invisible, an error born from sound waves and static. Yamamoto, whose strategy unraveled by that invisible hand, would later die in another ambush engineered by decrypted transmissions. Even genius could not escape the age of signals. In war's grim accounting, Midway signaled the transition from industrial might to informational supremacy. Fuel could be replaced, ships rebuilt. But once uncertainty takes root in an enemy's mind, it corrodes command faster than fire consumes steel. The men who fought that morning would remember not the sight of carriers burning, but the clouded vastness where messages murmured through infinite space, the unseen battlefield, where silence, not shouting, decided nations' destinies. As the Pacific now lies calm, the echoes of that day remain, the hiss of radio static mingling with the wind across endless waves. Somewhere within that quiet still lives the most human truth of Midway. That knowledge, patience and deception together, can reshape the fate of millions, even when carried by nothing more than a lone voice fading into the clouds.